of times when you're an entrepreneur and you're just starting out, you know what you're doing in terms of solving the business problem, but lack of data, where to get started, how do you get started? Like you're a B2B founder, you have just started. Media is a very, very powerful tool, and I totally believe in social media. However, the challenge with social media is that wrong message or right message, it amplifies it much.
3 to 4 lakhs is sufficient for you to generate some sort of a hypothesis that you can rely on. Hi guys, welcome to the ISB Entrepreneurs Network. This is a series of interview we'll be doing with various entrepreneurs who are from ISB, getting to know their entrepreneurial journey. And these entrepreneurs typically specialize in a business problem that is relevant to many of the entrepreneurs. So the idea is to bring the relevance of that problem, the expertise of that problem in front of the camera for the benefit of various other entrepreneurs from ISB. My name is Abhishek Bagalkot. I'm from class of 2013, PGP class of 2013 from Hyderabad. And I'm also the General Secretary for the ISB Alumni Association. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Nidhi Khator from class of 2010, who is an entrepreneur in the B2B lead gen space, which is a big problem area for many entrepreneurs, I'm sure. Because every time I speak to an entrepreneur, either from my class or previous classes or the future entrepreneurs, they always tell me that they are struggling with generating leads, good quality leads for their businesses.
Absolutely. And B2B lead gen is such a problem area because there is no structured approach that has been perfected over the years and that is available as a playbook for anyone. So there are so many customizations that you have to do based on your business. And a lot of times when you're an entrepreneur and you're just starting out, you know what you're doing in terms of solving the business problem, but this is not your expertise area. So you don't know where to get started. Where is my first lead coming from?
Right.
So it's definitely, that's the reason why I have been focused on this segment because of my previous experiences, and I feel that I can add some value to the other founders in terms of solving this problem for them.
Nice. So just as an introduction, you run a B2B lead gen company now?
Yeah, my company is trying to solve the problem for B2B lead gen. That's like the big picture.
Right.
The small picture is we are trying to create a framework and a structure for B2B SaaS companies in India, where cost is one of the major challenges in terms of customer acquisition costs. So trying to bring that cost down to the point that it becomes easier for these companies to go out, get the leads, get started, create a market for themselves.
Right.
Because when we are working with these startups, a lot of times they are attempting something new which hasn't happened before. So you are, in addition to just launching your product, you are also creating your niche segment, and customers are not really aligned in that market segment as yet. So you are creating that cohort of customers. So that's the challenge where structured approaches sometimes don't work.
Right. But how about your education and background in B2B lead gen? Like, what made you, in terms of pick up this problem? How long have you been working on this problem? What's your experience in that area?
So in terms of experience, in my pre-entrepreneurship journey, I have been worked in companies that have So in my pre-entrepreneurship journey sort of thing, in my corporate career, I have been in companies which have solved these lead gen problems in US. And I have seen that various structural approaches that have been implemented, and I have been part of projects where either I have handled the commission payout to the affiliate network where you're trying to do B2B lead gen, or created a product which was specifically focused on prospecting for your B2B lead gen. Have been working in this segment on and off for years. And when I came back to India, at that time I saw that I started working with small startups in establishing my business, and I had started with a very, very technological problem that I could offer to these companies in terms of managing their sales and optimizing their sales. However, in working with them, I have realized the bigger pain point or sort of priority zero problem for them is solving the B2B lead gen
Right.
problem. So that has sort of geared or pivoted my idea or my business focus right now to actually solve for that problem.
Yeah. And there is no doubt about it that B2B lead gen is a big problem space, because every time I speak to most of the B2B entrepreneurs, all they tell me is that how hard it is for them to generate leads. So it's a very worthy cause that you're pursuing, and all the very best in solving the problems.
Yeah. So I'm also looking down further 10 to 15 years down the line. My vision is that based on the way India is progressing or the startup network in India is progressing, we will see a lot more B2B products coming out of India for India. So that is the key differentiation here.
Right.
In India, we have always done B2B companies building for America.
Right.
We have done that a lot and we have done it successfully. And there is a sort of a quasi structure also available as to how to lay out your lead gen.
Right.
Like, for example, traveling to US, setting up or taking part in a trade show and doing lead gen there.
Right.
But similar structure doesn't exist in India. First
Right.
of all, there are not that many industry focused conferences or dedicated place for you to go and find those technology savvy customers.
Right.
If you're using standard social media channels, etc., then you are burning money
Right.
very easily.
Right.
So a lot of times your customer acquisition cost doesn't work out to what your LTV would be
Right.
in terms of if you're building for India and selling it in India at the price points that we generally sell.
Right.
So, and thirdly, I think the biggest challenge that I have felt when I started doing this in India was the data. There is so much dearth of data, like structured data.
Right.
Obviously, there is data all around us, but structured data for a B2B founder to get started with, especially if you're trying to create a new market segment. So that kind of data does not either exist or it's so shallow, and so the depth of the data in terms of the market isn't there.
Right.
So, for example, if I were to start a B2B gen company in US today, my first go-to would be I would just log into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, find my prospects there, start prospecting, and based on what target segment I hit, I'll start multiplying or scaling that segment.
Right.
However, depth of businesses that exists on LinkedIn today in India, especially in the SME segment, is actually not that great.
Right.
So a lot of times your numbers don't work out to the number of customers that you can acquire through these channels.
Right. You're absolutely right in terms of not having the data, in the sense that the data can get complicated and inefficient really, really fast, because you may be looking at for example, you're building a solution that is meant for banks. You know that all the banks are not going to be equally interested in your solution. So let's say you're looking at a bank that is less than 3 years old or 10 years old, has got all the approvals from the government, and they're looking at one specific sector to target, and for them you have developed a specific solution. It's almost impossible to get that data off the shelf.
Off the shelf, yeah.
It's almost impossible, at least in India. How is it in the US? You can kind of get that kind of data?
Yeah, actually, in US, in terms of the number of the dimensions or the features that we, as we call it, exists a lot. So for the same customer in either B2C or B2B segment, you have so many data points about your customer that you can create such micro segments.
Right.
That is not possible in India.
Right, right.
Like you will have barely a valid phone number and probably a valid email.
Correct. And one of the things with B2B lead gen is that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who are new to this, let's say somebody who set up a business, running them for 3 or 4 years, they're probably now looking at building a disciplined B2B lead gen system for their business, and they don't really have a framework of how to approach it in their mind.
Yeah.
And they struggle to say, where do I start? How do I get started? How much money do I invest in this? Do I need another person dedicated working for this? What is going to be my hiring criteria if I'm going to hire that person? So it's really a vague picture, and you need to kind of find your own foot completely on yourself. So have you developed some sort of a framework that could serve as like a starting point for most entrepreneurs to say
Yeah.
that, hey, this is a sequence of steps that I can execute at least in the first 6 months so that I can get my hand around this?
Yes, actually, we as a company, we have been trying to create that framework that most of the B2B SaaS companies can follow in India. And the general framework looks like this, that you first get started with something called micro segment pivot. So when you're targeting a very huge segment, when you're talking in India, numbers is never the problem.
Right.
You have a very lot of businesses that you can target to probably.
Right.
But then you have to develop what that micro segment among that whole target segment will be, which will work for you in terms of the ROI and the fact that they'll be interested in your solution right away.
Right.
Because you're launching a new solution right now. So that's always the first step that we suggest the customers try out, is creating that micro segment pivot. Then
So what do you mean by the micro segment? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. So when I say micro segment pivot, it's basically mostly when you think of B2B lead gen, companies will think that, okay, I want to sell to banks, or let's say I want to sell to restaurants. Then my step would be, okay, I want restaurants in these cities. Let's say I want restaurants in Delhi, I want restaurants in Mumbai, and they should at least be should have like average rating or location in terms of what their clientele is. But that's about it.
Right.
Because that's the depth of data that we have in India also. You cannot get further data than that.
Right.
However, let's say I'm creating a software which I need to sell to restaurants that, let's say, sell liquor or not liquor, or they don't sell liquor but they are vegetarian, pure vegetarian. There could be like different scenarios, or it could be something that soft restaurants that deliver online. So these are the kind of target segments that a B2B founder has in mind.
Right.
So then when you go out, you need to have your data segmented by features like whether they are selling online, whether they serve liquor, what is the seating capacity, what is the average bill like. So these are the data points that eventually will help you determine what your sub-segment where your product fits the best.
Right.
Because that's how you can keep your costs down.
Right.
If you are hitting everyone, then basically you are probably just spending money, and unnecessarily your cost of lead gen goes up.
Right.
Because you're targeting everybody.
Right.
So that's the first step that we suggest. And the problem that we are trying to solve here is that these kind of micro segments as a data point does not exist.
Right.
And this is custom to each industry.
Right.
So we are trying to solve this problem, how we can do that in a way that it's still done by technology, so that it's not something that you're paying through your nose.
Right.
Nose by. So that's the first step.
Right. One of the problems in this area also is that the founder or the business itself recognizes that there is a micro segment out there that is far more probable to accept your product and pay for it than just everybody in the market. And there are key drivers as to what differentiate that micro segment versus the other micro segments. And this actually is mostly two things. One is this is mostly invisible to the new founder. They don't know this information yet. And they also don't have this approach that I am going to go to a segment into that a sub-segment of a sub-segment of a sub-segment and only pick 5 or 6 companies, especially in the B2B space, and only target on selling to them. That discipline also does not exist.
That's true. Because of lack of technology, lack of data, like where to get started, how do you get started? Like you're a B2B founder, you have just started this on your own. Like where do you get started? There is nothing available online. You go to any data vendor that is selling data, they'll offer just like generic data.
Correct.
And the kind of accuracy you will hit is anywhere from 60 to 90%. Like it's
I would say it's
always,
much worse than that.
It's sometimes much worse than that. But yeah, that's the general approach that they would have to follow, because they don't have they don't know better. Then a lot of technology savvy B2B founders tend to favor social media a lot. They are like, okay, I'll create an ad on LinkedIn, I'll create an ad on Facebook, I'll try to find my customers that way. But social media is a very, very powerful tool, and I totally believe in social media. However, the challenge with social media is that wrong message or right message. It amplifies it much faster than you can probably handle. So let's say you go to social media and it's very, very attractive that, oh, you know what, I'll add this segment also, I'll add this segment also. And again, you will end up targeting all your segments and you're not getting valuable leads out of it. So one of the common anecdote or common complaint that I've heard from B2B founders is that I created an ad, I have a lead form, but most of the leads that are coming in are junk.
Right.
Like either the phone number is not valid or people are just entering it and they didn't really understand what they were getting into. And then when they try to approach that customer in terms of taking it to the next step, which is setting up a demo or something, that time it flames out.
Right.
So you have spent the money, but you haven't gotten anything out of it. And what I suggest in that scenario is you need to take a step back. Social media is a great tool if you know exactly who you're targeting, if you know exactly what message works for that segment, and you have the right words.
Right.
Or right vocabulary.
Right.
Then social media is great. So that's why we suggest that in our framework you take it to step 3, and step 2, after creating that micro segment, it's very important for you to do some A/B testing. You're going to call your target segment. Now you have data points in terms of whether a particular customer, for example, in restaurant SaaS solution, we were talking about whether the restaurant serves liquor or not, whether it's a family friendly, or let's say it serves vegetarian food. So you have those data points. Now when you do your A/B test, that's when you do a representative set, you do calling, you run your messages or your elevator pitch through these customers. And then you see which particular sub-segment is responding the best to.
Right.
Best to your vocabulary, your messaging, I know I keep using the word vocabulary, but it's so key and important because I've heard some of the companies make the misstep. They call their solution something else, but the way our customers understand it very, very differently.
Correct.
So it's very important
For
for
example,
you to...
billing and invoicing.
Yeah. So for example, invoices and billing. So
Right.
one of the companies we were working with, they were very clear that we want someone who creates invoices. Now, when we call the customers on our customer behalf, the first challenge that we were running into from SME segment is, what is invoices? What is bills? Like, I generate bills. Isn't that invoice?
Right.
So that's why I keep talking about vocabulary, because you need, and that's what a lot of marketing and branding folks say, that listening to the customer
Right.
or talking in the same language as the customer.
Right.
So that's why you have to do the A/B testing.
Right.
So that's when you determine exactly which micro segment is going to give you the right ROI, is receptive to your MVP or your messaging right now. And then that's when you go to social media. Now you have list of, let's say, 100 max to max, like 100 customers that have at least responded positively to your message. They might not have all signed up for a demo yet, but they have at least responded positively in terms of, okay, this solution seems like something that will work for me today or tomorrow. Right? So that's when you'd go to social media and you utilize social media to its best possible value,
Right.
which is creating those lookalike audiences, targeting customers that look like very similar to your representative set.
Right.
Right? And that's when you amplify the message. That's when you will start seeing some benefit out of social media and start amplifying the message.
Right.
Again, obviously, this is not something that you can do without optimizing it on a day-to-day basis. You have to look at your social media campaigns on a day-to-day basis, because social media platforms also favor the campaigns that are converting better.
Right.
So you have to keep looking at the campaigns, keep optimizing the campaigns, and as a fourth step in the framework, once you have set up everything, then and all the online tracking that you can possibly get it by technology these days, tracking your customers, when are they coming, when are they dropping off, those kind of things. That's when you take the next step of budget push, which is what we call budget push, which is where you pour more money into something which is working for you in terms of ROI, and start getting leads.
Right.
So that's when you will start seeing some impact of your social media and everything onto your actual business.
Understood. And a lot of people skip the first 3 steps and go to social media directly,
And,
because that's
directly,
so easily available.
Yeah.
So if I can do a quick recap. So first one is to have the discipline to identify a strong micro segment. The second step is to A/B test your message with your micro segment so that you can kind of see what is working, what is not working, modify that. And then after that, the third step would be to go to social.
Go to social media and amplify your message.
Right.
And as a fourth step, once you have the ROI a little bit optimized and you are hitting the numbers the way you want, that's when you do a budget push, which is
Right.
basically you put your money into it.
Right.
Actual
Right.
money. Yeah.
So what we see as social media marketing is just the top of the iceberg. Underneath,
Yeah.
there is all this hypothesis testing and work that goes on into before we get there. Right?
Absolutely. For the social media to work appropriately well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what kind of a team would you recommend in the initial days while this hypothesis is being tested? Do you think an entrepreneur can do this on their own as a head of sales or head of marketing for that company? Or would you recommend that there is another person supporting that person through this? What would the team structure be during the discovery phase where they are actually trying to figure out what the strategy should be?
So, I mean, I would really suggest that entrepreneur cannot do this all on their own, because a lot of times their expertise lies in the business problem or the product that they are creating or the service that they are offering to the customers, but not in terms of B2B lead gen.
Right.
So, I would suggest having like someone with a little bit of field sales experience in India who have actually sold to the customers, who understand and who have less tendency of biasing the customers. A lot of times entrepreneurs, when like I have done this own mistake myself when I was doing my first entrepreneurial venture, was as an entrepreneur, when you're talking to your customers also, you tend to bias them.
Right.
Because your questions are structured in a way that, okay, you know what, this is what I'm doing. Are you interested in it? And then a lot of times you don't take the negative feedback also
Right.
appropriately. So
Right.
I would suggest having some help in terms of doing that first A/B test where you're testing the messaging out, because then the actual feedback will come through that, okay, this
Right.
works, this doesn't work, kind of thing. And when you're getting into the social media, then some sort of social media expertise would help in terms of optimizing the campaigns
Right.
and just purely managing their social media.
Right.
Like, I mean, I have had customers where their accounts itself get logged every few days, social media accounts, because social media accounts all have very strict policies on what kind of language you can use in ads, what kind of how you target customers, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So you need to be very careful with that. Otherwise, if your account gets blocked, then you're basically you don't know what is the next step.
Understood.
So-
Understood. And the need for help in the initial times is for number one, to operate outside of our own biases. As an entrepreneur, I am very biased and I'm asking biased questions for which the answer most probably is a yes, but that's not a true measure of willingness to buy or sell or buy or pay for the product. And second one is also having some sort of a discipline in terms of approaching this in a disciplined manner
Yeah.
and ticking all the boxes that are required.
Yeah.
Because as entrepreneurs, we are juggling with so many things and we are typically not good at being disciplined about something over long periods of time.
Right,
Have you
yeah.
noticed that would you recommend that approach as well, or?
Yeah, so as you said, so basically a lot of times entrepreneurs, they are so attached to their idea that they the moment they hear something positive, they it needs to so when you're doing A/B test, it needs to reach that significant significance, right? So that's why it's very important for you to still follow through.
Right.
A lot of times the first positive feedback actually pushes you 10 steps further, and
Correct.
one negative feedback pushes you 5 steps
Back.
back, which is not actually the case, because a lot of times it's just about hitting the message right and talking about the features in a way that makes sense for the customers. So that's why I suggest like working with few field research, and that's what we also do. So when we are trying to do A/B test for the customers, we try to hire separate field sales consultants
Right.
who will help us navigate this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So even though the topic is marketing, in the initial strategic phase of your, framing your strategy, you would still recommend a field salesperson and not a marketing person to work through that phase of your,
Yeah.
digital marketing.
Yeah, because marketing, again, I think because we are specifically, I just want to clarify that because we are specifically talking about B2B SaaS lead gen, that's why my main focus is on B2B,
Right.
like field sales.
Right.
However, if I was doing this for a consumer company,
Right.
then it's a very different story because
Correct.
then marketing actually needs to take the lead.
Correct.
Because then your messaging needs to be right to appeal to general large mass audience, and you need to get the branding right, you need to have that messaging right.
Right.
However, in case of B2B lead gen, your main focus is that the problem area that you have identified
Right.
and the micro segment that you have identified, that sort of is a good marriage.
Right.
In a way that the moment you hit and if you have done generally, like lot of times, if you have done your customer research as a pre-step to you doing everything else in your entrepreneurship journey, and you have done the customer research right, then you actually know that micro segment.
Right.
Then it's all about just implementation.
Right.
Like how do you find the data, which as I said, in India it's lacking. How do you make the cost and ROI work for that micro segment? So a lot of times founders are at a stage where they know exactly which target segment will work for them. They just don't know how to get it and where to
Correct.
get it.
Right.
In that scenario, getting a consultant to help you get that data and will.
This consultant can also be playing this role, for a given time. It could be somebody who's reporting to you in
Yeah.
sales,
Yeah.
but you could give him or her a special assignment for a few months to
Yeah, yeah.
help you work through this strategy.
Right.
Do you have any recommendation for entrepreneurs, especially in India? Let's say somebody is doing a B2B SaaS company and they have already kind of built their MVP and they have a few pilot customers and they're now trying to expand. Do you have any budgetary recommendations? I'm not talking about the social media budget, but the budget required for, budget and time required for you to formulate your strategy. Would you recommend a budget for entrepreneurs to set aside once they start on the marketing journey?
I think it easily, if you follow a structured approach, then easily it takes about 3 to 4 lakhs for you to formulate the structure. You have figured out exactly what works for you
Right.
and what doesn't. Yeah,
Right.
even
Right.
for you to get to a stage where you're just your current customers are feeding to your marketing budget, and then you're multiplying the budget.
Right. So you say 3 to 4 lakhs is sufficient for you to generate some sort of a hypothesis that you can rely upon?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good number actually.
Yeah.
That's a number that most people can invest
Yeah.
and get to a strategy which they are now sure that every lakh they put in the marketing is going to produce them good leads
Good
rather
leads,
than.
and yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
that's sort of your test budget.
and how much time do you think it takes for you to come up?
That depends on which solution it is and how easy it is to put that micro segment pivot together. But generally, it takes 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for that. And in terms of going back to the framework in terms of what a micro segment looks like, and then doing some A/B testing of your messaging, and then going out to social media and seeing which one is working, and then amplifying that.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about some specific cases? We can talk about a few. So one of the things we could just talk about is maybe a restaurant SaaS company.
Yeah.
So if I were starting a restaurant SaaS business today and I'm selling some specialized solution, what would you recommend me to do? And let's say that I am piloting this initially as an entrepreneur. You're always piloting it with people that you know. So let's say I'm piloting with 4 or 5 people, and now I want to get into a place where next year I wish to acquire 15 paying customers that are, let's say, at least covering 60% of my operational cost.
Right.
And I'm at that stage now. What would you recommend as, for this case as a next step for an entrepreneur like this?
So if you, it's great that you have started this, and then the next step would be, first of all, looking at your current 5 customers. Are they? Is there any aspect of that customers that formulates them into a small micro segment? Is it just the proximity, or is it like most of the time when we hit our own network to actually set this up,
Right.
you have not hit a specific target segment. So you take one pilot customer, you take that as a micro segment, and then you start investing in that micro segment first. So depending on whichever is your most profitable customer, or who has used the product the best, kind of thing. And entrepreneurs generally have a sense of which of their customer is the best customer for them. So just take that best customer, sort of take that as a micro segment, and sort of do the same framework again.
Right.
So same, for example, if let's say you are hitting well with a segment that is selling snacks. So you have a customer that sells other stuff also, but snacks customer is using your product most. It's generating the most amount of revenue and has had the best impact in terms of business impact on them from your product.
Right.
So just to be just to clarify that. So in that scenario, that's your best customer, and you just take that snack segment and you try to find more customers like that, and that's what you make your target for the first year to be.
Right.
And obviously, it would require, like in case of snack segment, let's say snack segment, there would be a lot of restaurants. But let's say if you have hit a micro segment where the number of total micro segment looks actually pretty small for
Right.
you to be able to hit 50 or 50 customers in the next 1 year. So in that scenario, what you do is you just take a step back and little bit remodify your micro segment to a place where you have for you to generate 50 leads, like about 1,000 at least potential list
Right.
for you to get started with.
Right. And I like the fact that you spoke about the snack segment, because businesses are so unique in their own nature that two companies selling the same product may actually have completely different business movers. So snacks, for example, it could be morning snacks and it could be evening snacks, or it could be late night snacks, right?
Yeah.
As well. So you have customers who are coming for various other reasons, and the motivators in the morning snack is to have a breakfast and leave. Maybe healthy breakfast is a message that works, but in the evening it's more like a relaxed time, and the messaging that you need to send to customers is that you are going to find a nice ambience to have a snack and stuff like that. So even though they are selling
the same thing,
the messaging that works for you is going to be completely unique.
See, that's why I keep talking about micro segment.
Right.
You need to understand your customers to the point that you classify them correctly.
Correct.
So I just said snacks, but yeah, that as you rightly said, it could be snacks which are focused on morning snacks, or it's something that is more grab and go kind of things, or it is something that is a sit down snack. So it's obviously that's where you identify. But for example, if you take your current customer is a sit down snack kind of a person, but there are not that many sit down snack places. So then you basically expand it a little bit and see if it works for all the snack segment. What is working for this this customer which is selling snacks? Is it actually the dine out is very important? In that case, forget about snack category, get more dine out category. So that becomes your micro segment, that dine out, not the snacks. Then focusing on snacks will probably hurt you more than going after dine out. So that's why it's very important, if you are in that stage where you already have like 4 or 5 successful customers, that it's very important for you to focus on what exactly works. Which customer is your best customer. You should always know that. Know your best customer.
And also the discipline required to understand various attributes of your best customers, right? You may not know enough about your customer, or you have not spent time to understand your customer well enough, in the sense that you may not discover the key drivers that is making these customers come to you many times. And you think that something else is a key driver, but the other key driver is hidden to you. Until you discover that key driver, you are still in an area of, groping in the dark. And then once you hit that nail on its head, that's when you can say that now I'm ready to amplify this.
Yeah, but as you were saying, like I also want to point out that this is like a never-ending process.
Correct.
This is not something that, okay, today you find out that, okay, this particular messaging works for this micro segment, that tomorrow you won't have to do the A/B test. You will still have to do the A/B test. That should become like your standard B2B lead gen process. That every time you are trying to reach out to a new segment, or you're trying another marketing push, you're first testing out whether it still works, whether it's still hitting the right notes in terms of getting the right customers, and you're getting positive response from them, and then invest. So you have to keep doing this in a more structured approach.
Right. So you continuously allocate some amount of effort, understanding your customers again and again.
Right. And I think this is mostly coming from my own product management experience, that whenever you're trying to do a new product launch or new feature launch, you always have to go through that process, that, okay, is this feature going to work for my current customers? Or is this something, or am I launching this feature to get new customers? So you need to be aware of that, and based on that, do your customer research. So it's the similar concept, but just have that structured approach. I've read this so many times that a lot of every B2B lead gen blog will tell you that all these platforms obviously work. LinkedIn works, Facebook works, all the social media works. But eventually there is something called other,
Right.
like other which works better. Like
Right.
no one sort of identifies exactly what that other is.
Right.
And what I'm trying to say is that what other is, basically you're amplifying your message through social media. But what that other is, that extra effort that your salespeople have put into when they were actually doing the selling.
Right.
So they have understood something from that customer which is not brought back in a more structured manner. But they know. They the movement. So a lot of times when you're talking to a seasoned salesperson who has been doing, let's say, selling for one particular software really well, they would tell you, they can tell. Even in the first meeting, they can tell, okay, this customer is not going to pan out.
Right.
So I'm not going to spend more money or time on this customer. So they know that.
Right.
But that intuition is what I'm trying to build into a structure,
Right.
which helps the B2B founders who are starting out.
Right. Right. No, that's a great point. So the first step, if I were a restaurant SaaS business, first step is to go and understand the customers that I have piloting with and what has worked in that pilot and understand them really, really well.
Yeah.
Right. That's the first step. And what should I do next?
So the next step would be doing the A/B test. So taking 50 more such micro segment and trying out your message on that.
You mean 50 people in the same micro segment?
Same micro segment. 50 people or 50 businesses in the same micro segment. Then trying out your message with them.
And you call
And
them.
yeah, mostly in case of B2B lead gen, we suggest either email or if you have like good quality or good verified emails, then email or doing the calling on their own.
Right.
So that is always the first step. Those 50 people would verify what you know already, or it would actually point out like something new to you. And that's when whatever learnings you have from those 50 snack vendors, that's what you do and put that into social media and sort of an email nurture campaigns. So that's when you do some sort of database marketing, that you have built a list of all the snack vendors.
Yeah.
Let's say you have 1,000 vendors, you start attacking them in a more structured manner in doing email nurture, doing social media
What
campaigns.
is email nurture? Sorry.
So email nurture is basically, so when you send an email, the open rates on emails is really shockingly low. So email nurture, what we say is like nurturing that particular customers in a way that offering them something every few weeks. Which keeps them interested. So a lot of times customers is ideal customer. You have hit your ideal customer. You know that this business is going to buy from you.
Right.
But they either don't have the budget right now, or they are not ready to buy right now, or they are probably evaluating. They
Or
are
you
in
have
their
not
evaluating
educated
journey.
your customers completely.
Or it's completely it is that they don't even know that this is a problem for them.
Right.
So in that scenario, don't lose that customer. It needs to be part of your email nurture campaigns. And coming from like a structured, like working in marketing or digital marketing, you feel that that's something that is given, but that's not true. A lot of times the B2B founders that I work with, they don't know that email nurture is such an important step, because a lot of times you might not get this customer today, but you might get this customer 3 months down the line. But you need to keep them excited to the point that they know your name, that when that sales call hits, when your salesperson hits that, then you can get it.
Understood. And it's also important, I just wanted to point out that when you're calling those first 50 businesses from your micro segments, and if you discover something new, it's important also to have the discipline and the willingness to go back to the drawing board if something is not working right, and be kind of humble enough to accept that maybe you haven't yet found the micro segment, or you haven't yet found the messaging, or you haven't even built the product that solves the key problem for your target micro segment.
For your target market micro segment.
Right. Great. And then so let's say that I've now spoken to 50 people and I'm finding some sort of success there. Out of the 50 people, I was able to close, let's say, 5 deals in, say, 3 months. Would you then, or 6 months, because depending upon the sales cycle, how long, what do you think should be our next step after that?
So the next step would be, as I said, invest in social media. So those 50 customers is going to serve like a lookalike audience in your social media campaigns. So you enter their phone numbers, emails, or type of interest and category that they belong to
Right.
in social media, and create your ads accordingly.
Right.
And obviously, at no point when you're doing a social media campaign that you're not tracking it. You have to track how many customers actually end up on your web page, how many end up subscribing to a newsletter, how many end up subscribing to any demo service demo that you are setting up. So those things are very important. You have to at any point in time keep tracking that and keep optimizing your social media campaigns accordingly, and make sure that you have a consistent, because the moment you get into social media, and the reason why I suggest that you delay the social media a little bit is because once you get into social media, keeping a consistent budget in social media is very important for you to get your desired results. Because you cannot do a thing like, okay, I invest $100 rupees today, and then tomorrow I don't do anything. Then 3 days later, I'm going to invest another 200 because
Right.
when I know something.
Right.
That doesn't work, because there are so many people trying to advertise to the same segment, that if you don't have a consistent performance and you don't have like the consistent return or the conversions, then social media itself, like the algorithms itself, is going to deprioritize you.
Right.
And that's the problem, and that's not something that's specific to India or specific to B2B lead gen companies. It's actually when we were working in Clickable for a few of the US clients, that constant bid optimization was something that we had to do almost every day. Like we had developed algorithms to do that, because it gets out of hand eventually, that you have to keep optimizing $1 here, $1 here, so things like that, right? So you have to constantly do it, otherwise your ad will get its peak and then it will die out.
Die down.
Ads die out as soon as they peak on social media. That's the reason why I suggest that you have to delay your social media campaigns a little bit until you know that you are ready to hit that budget and you are ready to actually derive some value out of the budget. Because today you do it, tomorrow your ad account will not have that much credibility. So it's also ad account credibility is also very important for you to get consistent results out of social media. So that's another mistake I have seen people do, because again, doing today, not doing tomorrow is actually going to hurt you more.
Right. So far we were discussing how a B2B SaaS company can actually generate marketing leads, leads through marketing for their business. I'd also want to spend some time discussing IT services company, because so many of those exist, and I think a lot of our alumni are also engaged in generating leads for IT services or other services organization. So what would your recommendation be, Nidhi, for a IT services firm or a professional services firm? How do you think they can do online lead gen through marketing?
So IT services is a little bit specialized division and the specialized business where you're selling to B2B. But I think in general, the framework that we have just now discussed, pivot, A/B test, invest in social media, and lastly budget push, that general framework actually works. But there could be customizations that are required if you're an IT services company. So for example, we start off with pivot. So what is the pivot? Like if you are IT services company specializing in a specific technology, then that having that information as to which customer for which customer technology, which technology works better or is compatible to the existing technology that they have. So for example, this is done a lot of times manually, that you'll go to their websites, you'll check, or there are these portals online where you can go and see which company is using what technology. Are they using Java? Are they using .NET? Like which .NET is very old technology, but what technology are they using? That information you can find out. The second step or second important pivot would be that you need to know what their focus in terms of are they technology savvy. So that also, again, that's something that we consider as a part of your micro segment pivot feature, where you try to find out like how technology savvy are the founders. Are they blogging about, or are they talking about what technology solutions they are solving in their company, or they are talking about how technology, or are they at least following a lot of technology blogs? Like those are the kind of things that you can find online about your founders that you or the company owners that you're trying to target to. So obviously that's the first step you're going to do. You're going to find out your micro segment pivot, and then as a next step you are going to A/B test. So again, A/B test in this case will look a little bit different. So it's not just testing out the message or the pricing, but here you are actually A/B testing what set of technologies with which my services would work best. Like for example, if you are offering website development, then is it that all the websites that are on 1.0 is your right customer, or based on your pricing and your availability in terms of the number of engineers, or just the fact that what kind of experience level that you bring in your engineering staff, you can decide whether you are hitting the segment which is trying to redefine their website presence, or trying to create new websites, or
Right.
they are trying to optimize their websites. What stage of technology savviness are they in? And that's what your micro segment would be, and that's what you'll A/B test against.
Right.
So A/B test in case of IT services, again, another key differentiation would be you might end up doing 2 or 3 small projects and trying to see if the economics work in a specific case better than the other case,
Right.
just because what
So in this case,
services you
A/B test
offer.
would be actually acquiring those customers and doing.
Acquiring 2 or 3 customers, doing small projects with them, and then trying to see what works, and then based on that expanding it.
Right.
The third step that we talked about, invest in social media. Again, a lot of it in case of IT services would be depending on creating an influencer strategy. So you're still using the same social media, but instead of just creating an ad selling your software, you're mainly focused on creating a thought leadership in the business problems that you're going to solve for your customers.
Right.
So, for example, if you are talking about digital transformation, then you have a blog talking about how efficient your business has become, or your case studies of how you can make a business efficient on blogs and Twitter, and promoting that content.
Right.
So that will attract the businesses more. So lot of investing in social media will be driven via your content marketing, which is
Right.
very important, especially if you are a professional services firm, including IT services, obviously. And as a last step, that budget push. That budget push again involves putting in more money where your ROI is working, but in addition to that, building your SEO better so that you're getting more organic leads, investing more in terms of creating like good quality content, which you can probably give to your customers for free also.
Right. Right.
So
And
more or less the framework is the same. It's just there are some customizations that are required in the same framework for it to work for your customer.
so there is an emphasis on testing few small transactions,
Yeah.
and there is an emphasis on
Content strategy.
content strategy. What about SEO? Do you think SEO is important for B2B professional services firms?
Yeah, SEO is definitely important, because the fact, as I said, creating an influencer strategy is very important. You need to be a digital mover, or you need to be a influencer in the segment that you're trying to sell to. Because acquiring just engineering services won't get you there.
Right.
So that's why it's very important to invest in SEO also, because then you are getting a lot of organic leads.
Correct.
And not that SEO is not important. SEO is always important, because no matter how much money you pour through social media ads and everything, or ads in general anywhere, you need SEO for you to fuel your growth.
Right.
In the most economical way. So SEO is always important. You should always have a website presence with SEO working correctly. So if you don't have capability or in-house, then you should definitely hire some external help to figure out the SEO.
Understood. So the key aspects for a digital marketing, or rather digital marketing strategy for a B2B services firm would be the same framework, but in the A/B testing phase, focus on key transactions, some small transactions,
yeah.
and also have developed thought leadership in content in your social media presence, and also have SEO as an important element of it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Nidhi, for talking to us. It was a great pleasure. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will benefit a lot from listening to what ideas you have about digital marketing. Is there any way that, our audience can get in touch with you if they have any more questions, because you're a subject matter expert in this area? If they have any more questions, is there any way they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I'll let you know all my email address and all the social handles where I'm available. People can reach out to me whenever they want, and I'm happy to have just a consultation or any way I can help our
Yeah.
ISB alumni network. I would be really happy to do that.
Yeah, and I would personally also recommend that, because last time I recommended somebody to talk to Nidhi, they actually benefited a lot from that conversation, and they are now doing better than they were before they spoke to Nidhi. So I wish you all the best, Nidhi. Thank you so much for taking time for us, and it was wonderful speaking to you. And hopefully in future we'll continue going in depth into how digital marketing and B2B lead gen can work for ISB founders.
Absolutely. I
Thank
would
you so
love to be
much.
part
Have a
of
great
this.
day.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.